So.
Yeah.
All right, 10 o'clock. This is the time scheduled for the public meeting of the Nevada Commission on Ethics. Let's call the meeting to order. We'll start with the roll call. Chair Scherer is here. Vice Chair Wallen.
Here.
Commissioner Langton.
Here.
Commissioner Lowry.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner Moran is absent. Commissioner Reynolds. Here. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Staff list, Executive Director Armstrong.
Here.
Commission Counsel Bassett.
Here.
Outreach and Education Officer Harvey.
Here.
Investigator Terry.
Here.
Senior Legal Researcher Hazlett.
I'm here.
And Executive Assistant Pedroza.
Here.
Okay. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America,
of
to
the
the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
under God, indivisible.
liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. That brings us to the public comment section of our agenda. This matter is put on the agenda to allow members of the public to comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken under this agenda item. So anyone would like to make public comment today?
Yes, we do have one member of the public on Zoom who would like to make public comment.
Great. Let's go ahead and.
He's unmuted. Mr.
Okay. All right. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. I say it's a full room there in Las Vegas. So first things first, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. I appreciate that it is a difficult job, so thank you for doing the work. The Nevada Ethics Commission is meant to be a vital backstop for public trust in government. Right now, it functions mostly as a toothless tiger. The Nevada Real Estate Division imposes fines exceeding $100,000 and revoke licenses when warranted. That is what real enforcement looks like. When you get bit by that tiger, it has consequences. Consider this. Be a dishonest realtor or property manager. You face a 6-figure fine and lose your license. Be an unethical government official. You get a promotion, more power, and at worst, a gentle nibble from a toothless tiger. Protecting consumers in real estate transactions is important. Maintaining public trust in government leadership is more crucial to our democratic system. Former City Council member Naomi Jordan violated ethics laws when leaving her position. Her punishment from this board was a $3,060 fine. Her reward, a salary increase by over $30,000. Her influence grew from being one of 7 council members to being a sole decision maker. Then Sheriff Lombardo used his elected position dozens, perhaps hundreds of times to campaign for governor. His fine was 20 grand. His reward was the governorship himself. It is nearly impossible to measure the increase of money and power that came with that. For ambitious officials, the Ethics Commission acts are simply a cost of doing business, and it's a small price to pay for money, power, and position. The commission spends significant money on research and education. That is a good thing. Please keep doing it. But let's be direct. Ignorance of ethics law is no excuse for public officials, just as ignorance of law is no excuse for a traffic violation or robbery. These are public servants with power and responsibility. They don't get to claim they didn't know better. Consider your ongoing cases with Devin Reese and the city council. He advocated for major pay raises and bonuses for then city manager Thornley. Thornley or his staff approved Reese's travel. You have those documents, I believe. Now Thornley faces his own separate ethics allegations. Both Reese and Thornley maintained professional relationships with Jordan before and after her ethics violations. They had front row seats to see what happens when you get bitten by a toothless tiger, and saw clearly that the bite does not hurt much at all. Why such weak enforcement? Is it because commissioners aspire to higher positions in government? The law gives this commission real authority. You choose not to use it. Why is it more serious to be an unethical in real estate than unethical in government? Please be the vital backstop the people of Nevada need. Protect the public trust. Stop being an insignificant cost of doing business. It's time to grow some teeth.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment today? No
We have
one,
no
no one on
other-
Zoom, no one here in the room.
There's no one here in the room and we've not received any written public comment prior to today's meeting.
Great, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 3, the approval of the minutes from the January 16th, 2025 commission meeting. Commissioner Langton was excused from January meeting. Commissioner Miller was not on the commission, so they will be abstaining from this matter. Do any commissioners have any changes to the minutes as presented? If not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, with Commissioner Langton and Commissioner Miller abstaining. Brings us to item number 4. Discussion related to the commission proclamation honoring Commissioner Stan Olson's years of service to the commission. Do we have the language of the proclamation? I've read it, but
Here, I'll do.
thank you.
I have a bigger if you want.
I bet I'll put my glasses on.
That's pretty little.
The proclamation reads, whereas Stan Olson was appointed to the Nevada Commission on Ethics by the governor and has served with great distinction as a valued member from July 2023 to November 2024. And whereas a lifelong Nevadan, Stan attended the College of Southern Nevada and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And whereas a public servant through and through, Stan has served various organizations, including the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the United States House of Representatives, and the Kauai Police Department. Among his many career accomplishments, Stan served Nevada as a state senator from 2010 to 2011. And whereas Stan's community service endeavors are recently exemplified by his voluntary service on the Nevada State Law Enforcement Memorial, Henderson Chamber of Commerce, International Homicide Investigators Association, and Las Vegas Metropolitan Museum and Historical Society, and the Nevada Taxi Authority. And whereas Stan served on the commission during a time of transformation, wherein the commission fulfilled its mission to ensure the public's trust in government through outreach and education, issuance of detailed opinions in contested cases and advisory matters, and through the development of substantive statutory provisions and procedural regulations to enhance ethical responsibilities of public officers and employees while ensuring fairness and due process. Whereas as a commissioner, Stan's deep Nevada roots, as well as his experience in state and local government and law enforcement, brought an important perspective to the commission and were instrumental in steering the commission's programs for outreach and education and investigations. Stan demanded the utmost ethical integrity of Nevada's public officers and employees, having served in various public roles throughout his career, and appreciating the public's trust in government free from conflicts of interest. Stan's passion for fair and thorough investigations improved the commission's approach to complaint cases, and therefore be it resolved that the members and staff of the Nevada Commission on Ethics hereby commend Stan for his contribution and express their extensive gratitude and respect to Stan for his dedicated service to the state of Nevada Commission on Ethics and the Constitution of the United States. Any questions or comments on the proclamation?
I just want to say thank you, Stan, for your service. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd say we'll make sure that he gets the copies now living out of state, but I always appreciated Stan's passion for good government. If I got a call from Commissioner Olson, it was mostly to say like, yes, this is really bad government. We don't have jurisdiction over this. So let's complain about bad government together and then we'll focus on, that part that is our law. But he had a passion for government doing things, well for people.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and Stan and I had some of those same discussions. Sometimes things that we don't believe are right aren't necessarily within our jurisdiction, so there's not much we can do about them, but But yeah, I appreciate that. Any comments? Do we have a motion to approve the proclamation? Do we need a motion to approve the proclamation?
No.
No, okay. That brings us to item 5 then. Discussion and approval of a proposed stipulated agreement concerning Ethics Commission complaint number 24-109C regarding Charles Green, Secretary Treasurer, Board of Homeopathic Medical Examiners, State of Nevada. So Vice Chair Wallen and Commissioner Lowry served on the review panel for this matter and are precluded from participating in any further proceedings in this matter pursuant to NRS 281A.220 subsection 4. Do we have the attorneys for the parties here? And if so, please identify yourselves. I think you're muted.
He's muted.
I'm sorry, yeah, Mont Tanner here for Charles Green.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner.
And Ross Armstrong, representing myself today.
Thank you. Executive Director Armstrong, do you have a presentation on this proposed stipulation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On August 8th of 2024, the commission initiated a complaint on its own motion. In this case, on October 17th, after an investigation, the review panel referred this matter to the commission for an opinion. At that point, the parties agreed to attend a settlement conference. And we were lucky enough to have Commissioner Lowry serve as our settlement commissioner. No, yes.
Correct.
Commissioner, sorry. Commissioner Lowry was our settlement commissioner for that matter. And we came to the following agreement to resolve this case. The allegations in this case is that Mr. Green did not appropriately disclose or abstain during a public meeting of the Board of Homeopathic Medical Examiners. And on a matter in which they were voting to compensate Mr. Green for his services to the board. The resolution is that Dr. Green will agree to one non-willful violation of NRS 281A 420 subsection 1, which is our disclosure requirement, that he will pay a $500 monetary penalty. That $250 of that monetary penalty will be suspended, that he needs to provide that board all of the information and materials it needs to continue its work. Mr. Green no longer serves on the board. That if he returns to public service, he must complete training, and that he's to receive an admonishment from the commission in terms of this stipulated agreement. Of note, in this particular matter, it's important, I think, for the commission to understand that while the Board of Homeopathic Medical Examiners was hearing a matter to pay Dr. Green, their statute that establishes their board specifically allows and envisions that type of payment for the Secretary Treasurer. And so, we looked at some other potential violations, but that statute gives them the complete ability to pay him for his services. Mr. Green did perform years of service for the board. It's a pretty small board with a small budget, and he helped keep it together. The meeting itself, I will just say there could be a lot of improvements in the operation of the meeting that may not have allowed Mr. Green the opportunity to properly disclose. There was no call for disclosures at any point. That there are, other matters involving this case that the Department of Business and Industry is working on currently as well. That is the summary of the resolution of the matter and some of the factors why I believe this resolution is appropriate. I thank again Commissioner Lowry for her help in serving as our settlement commissioner, and I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Mr. Tanner, any comments before we go to questions from the commissioners?
No comments. I think Ross, appropriately outlined, the history and the terms and what we all agreed to. So I think we're all good with it.
Great, thank you. Questions from commissioners? Comments?
No questions.
Mr. Langton, did you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
There's no questions or comments. Commissioner Miller?
I'll move to accept the terms of the stipulated agreement as presented by the parties and the direct commission counsel to formalize the agreement in the appropriate legal form.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0, with Mr. Lowry and Vice Chair Wallen abstaining. Brings us to item number 6. Well, item number 6 has been removed from the agenda. So it brings us to item number 7.
It's gonna close that door.
Discussion and possible direction to commission staff regarding the commission's reputational goals in alignment with the adopted strategic plan. Commission Counsel Bassett.
This is me today. So you all, as you know, received a reputational survey that I drafted up. I'm not a survey, I don't have survey training, so hopefully it made sense to everyone. But as you know, one focus of the commission's strategic plan is maintaining the public's trust in the commission. A subset of that for us was determining what reputation the commission has, what reputation the commission wants to move and strive towards having. So the purpose of the survey was just to get some feedback from staff and from commissioners about what the priorities in our areas of advisory opinions, education and outreach and enforcement should be. And so I can give you a little information about those responses. Moving forward, we'll be doing some things with those responses in implementing the strategic plan. But in the area of enforcement, overall, people's opinion was that the commission is viewed currently as being not very well known and weak on enforcement. And pretty much everyone thinks we should be striving for a reputation of being aggressive, consistent, and fair, which I think are good things to strive for. We asked what reputation, I asked some specific questions about what reputation the commission should aim for, and the top vote was for the commission primarily using its enforcement efforts to educate those that have violated the ethics law rather than punishing them. I also asked people to rank the importance of our different forms of resolution, which are opinions, stipulated agreements, letters of caution and instruction, and deferral agreements. And far and away, most votes were for the commission to try to issue more opinions to set precedent for future cases and provide education. And in looking at one thing we've talked about quite a bit is, the keeping current resolutions in line with what we've done in the past. And so one of the questions went to that, and most people voted that they thought the terms on which previous similar ethics matters were resolved should be one factor considered by the commission in resolving new ethics complaints rather than not considered at all or being like one of the major considerations. So looking at advisory opinions, most people indicated that they thought our current reputation was that it was an intimidating process, which I can understand, that it's not well known that that's available to public officers and employees, and that it's a slow process. Sometimes people do need answers quicker than our process currently sort of allows. And people indicated they thought the commission should strive for a reputation in advisory opinions of them being clear, easy to access, prompt, and accurate, which those seem like good to me. And I asked people to sort of do an order of importance as to how they think advisory opinions should be written. And the two top answers were that they should be written in plain language so they're easy to understand for all readers, and that they should be narrowly tailored to specific questions raised in the request. So that's useful information for me. Then in outreach and education, here we got higher marks from everyone. Everyone felt like our current reputation is positive, but we could be more active and well-known. And that we should be striving for a reputation that our first priority is education, that we're proactive and that we have improved agency partnerships. The number one, reputation importance that people picked was that our goal should be to train as many public officers and employees on the general requirements of the ethics law as possible each year. Then secondarily, focusing efforts on specialized training, and then lastly would be sort of train the trainer kind of programs. So I'll be providing more information about what we're gonna do with this, you know, in implementing the strategic plan at the April meeting, but I don't know if anyone had any questions or thoughts.
Commissioner Lowry?
Thank you. I couldn't have planned it better with the public comment today. I am very appreciative of the public comment today. I appreciate that it was measured and articulate. And one of my questions was going to be, isn't it important to us to know not just how we as the commission perceive our reputation, but how members of the public perceive our reputation? And so I would really take to heart the comments made today. I think that there is wisdom to be gleaned from the comments in terms of sometimes the commission may look toothless, but that may be because our hands are tied by the law or the limits on our jurisdiction. And that's where the education comes in for the public. I've had public come up to me and say, what were you guys thinking when you did this decision? Why weren't you harder? Why weren't you tougher? You know, on something that they are rightly outraged by. And the other side of that is I probably lean more towards, I would not put education at the top of our goal list. I would put it equal to holding people accountable. And using our tools that we have to hold them accountable and give the public confidence in government. So I think there is room in terms of our strategic plan to utilize our outreach department to poll or find a way to get additional feedback from the general public. Do they know who we are? What are their concerns? Do they agree with the comments stated this morning, which I suspect a lot of people do? So if that's how a lot of people feel about us, let's see what we can do about it. So we have the general public's perception of us, our own perception of ourselves, and then we have our customers' perception of us in terms of the people we educate and serve that are government employees. But I appreciate Council Bassett, I appreciate the survey. Sir, I appreciate your comments this morning. Your timing is perfect. So those are my remarks.
Thank you. Outreach and Education Officer Harvey, would it be possible for you to bring back to us in April some thoughts about how you might go about surveying the public and surveying our customers, the
Got a
agencies?
very easy answer for you on that. No. I go out on leave in a week and a half and I won't
Okay.
see you in April.
But we can make sure that.
Okay.
Executive
Maybe you
Director and I
can
will work
consult
on
in the meantime with Executive Director Armstrong.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm thinking obviously you could do a survey on social media potentially.
Yes, and most of our reach on social media is to our public officers and employees. There isn't a lot of followers that we have specifically members
General
of the
public.
public. So it'd be interesting to figure out how to tap into that and make sure it is a decent, well-represented survey. But it's worth exploring as any survey is.
Well, could you put a survey on the website and then do like a press release to say members of the
Absolutely.
public, if you'd like to
That's good.
comment, you know, then that might be a
I wonder if
way.
any of our media partners would be open to telling the public about it.
Yes.
Seeing who might be.
Chair, one of the things I think that's really important, and can be an uncomfortable topic. I was a city manager for just about 21 years in 3 different cities. And with administrative positions comes a responsibility to work with your elected officials and go through what to really train them in terms of what their financial obligations are for everything from, travel to, campaign finance issues, to make sure that they follow the rules. And a lot of managers don't do that, and, or administrative person doesn't have to be a city manager, it could be city administrator. But they need to be doing that. And that's really, I think, where training that I would say training trainers should occur. So, that's also, but, training elected officials is also very important, but that internal training and backup on that is exceptionally important to make sure that the elected officials that you work with, or the public officials that you work with within the context of your local government, know what the rules are and know how to interact with those rules within that. And, all of our cities and our cities have charters.
Right.
And charters cover those issues for the administrator. Counties are a little different example, but the city and county managers have an organization, as you probably know, their local government managers organization, that would be an opportune time to present to them when they have their meetings, and they do meet several times a year. But I think it's really important that you go down into the level of the administrators and working, and our public comment put that out today, and there's some, when I heard some of the things, I'm like, okay, who, I won't get to that, but there needs to be training at that level in terms of on top and reinforcing what we are doing with our training. And it's extremely important to have that.
Yes.
And I find that's true, especially with the appointed boards, the small appointed boards at the local government level. I mean, Executive Director Armstrong and I talked about this a little bit. I think a lot of the elected officials get captured by the Secretary of State and by the county clerks. But it's those appointed boards that.
But your planning commissioners and
Airport Authority, Regional Transportation Commission, yeah, those kinds of boards at the local government level, that if the city manager is not on top of making sure they know what their obligations are, then they may not get much training, so. Any other comments? Questions?
I guess I would echo the comments that have already been said. I think our advisory opinions, we have had times where county commissioners have come to us for an emergency advisory opinion. We've turned it around like in 5 days or something like that. And I think what some people need to understand is somebody may ask for an advisory opinion, but there's not enough information there. So then staff has to get with that person and wait for that person to respond. So it's not really on us. Oftentimes it's on the person who's asking for the advisory opinion if we don't have enough information. I mean, I can recall there was one that about a year or so last year that, they'd been asked for an advisory opinion, and then they were asked to get the information back, and it was like 30 days before they got the information back. So we have to look at it that way. For the new commissioners, I think our advisory opinions are a lot easier to read, especially now that we've done an executive summary. I can tell you firsthand, I asked for an advisory opinion when I became controller, and I ended up going to the Attorney General because it really didn't say anything. And so I think now we need the legal verbiage in there just so it holds up and we have precedent, but I think the executive summary, I think, is very helpful to us. And I think one thing we might want to do with the advisory opinion, maybe we add a paragraph on there that says, if need be, consult your legal counsel, to understand this better. Because they have that option. That's just my thoughts there. I think training is very important. And I think we've really made some leaps and bounds with our training program and stuff out there. Thank you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are an insurance body, so we have to consider this the facts and circumstances of each individual case and when it comes down to it, but,
Mr. Chip, oh, I'm sorry.
yes, Mr. Langton.
Oh, thank you. I've been listening to the comments and apparently this is the appropriate time, I think, to say I was hoping that Mr. Schmidt or Shrimp would still be on, but he's gone. Most of you know, I've only been on for about 10 months, but I've really been impressed by the hard work that Ross and Liz and staff have all done. When I got on, I thought, okay, I'll have a few hours here and a few hours there. There's been days when I've read everything that everybody's done, and it's taken me like 5 hours. And the community obviously just looks at one thing and says, oh, these guys do nothing. But I want to commend the whole staff and especially Director Ross for the depth of the analysis that have been done. I've done sidebar research as well, and I've never found anything that was wrong with either the proposed opinions or with the analyses of it. There's been one or two times when I've questioned why are we only giving them a little bit of penalty, but then when I look at it in the long run, it's apparent that we're not out for a pound of flesh. We're out for educating the person that's the subject as well as the public. So I've been impressed very much, and I will quit kissing everybody's butt, but they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langton.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I don't think we need a motion on
No,
it. We
we
didn't ask for any specific action. That'll bring us to item number 8, report by Executive Director on agency status and operations. Executive Director Armstrong.
Thank you. This is Executive Director Armstrong. There's a written report in the packet for agenda item 8. Some quick operational highlights. We welcome new Commissioner Miller, of course, who's hit the ground running, and so welcome to your first meeting. I think we've gotten you all onboarded. If there's outstanding things, let us know. We're working with our centralized services on some of that stuff. Can be a challenge. We do have an associate counsel plan in place where we're gonna work on supports for our current senior legal researcher. And then upon passage of the bar can auto promote into that associate counsel position. And we'll probably so get super technical state HRE for a second, but we'll probably have him slide in as an underfill and then either do an emergency appointment for an SLR or contract SLR services until we have assurance that that plan will work out. And so that is our plan on that associate counsel piece, which will be great. And I will say, as you know, this has been vacant for a while and we have struggled to fill this position. As we talk to our other state level agencies with attorneys, they are going through similar issues. So Commissioner Reynolds had said, hey, go talk to the attorney for injured workers. They've got this great program where they're students at Boyd and they get funneled right in. And so we did, and they said, this is how it worked, but it hasn't worked for the last like 2 years. It's dried up, that pipeline dried up. Our folks at the Attorney General's office that we work with that have done some coverage for us when we have conflicts, you know, they're like, oh, we were fully staffed with attorneys and then now we're back to like 20-30% vacancies. So it's a challenge, but we have a good plan in place.
Russ, how long is how long has it been vacant?
Almost, it'll be a year in March.
Yeah, March. Commission Counsel Bassett was our previous incumbent. She promoted up to the Commission Counsel position, and so it has been vacant since then.
March will be a year, yeah.
Yeah.
The next item would be the legislature. We're in the legislative session. This is our first meeting since the legislature began. I've been providing weekly updates to commissioners and staff about the progress during the session. We don't have a bill this session, so that takes off a substantial amount of work for us. On February 11th, they invited us to present before the joint committee of the Senate and Assembly Legislative Operations and Elections Committee. So that presentation was provided. There were no major questions or concerns presented during that meeting, which would have been an opportunity for the legislature to do that. And then I'll talk about the budget later on. There are two interesting bills that we're keeping an eye on. One is Assembly Joint Resolution 3, which is a constitutional amendment proposal from Assembly Member Kasama that places legislative disclosure requirements in the Constitution with some other items. I know there's been some feedback, like what is the enforcement mechanism? Because there isn't one laid out in that particular resolution. Assembly Member Kasama has a handful of good government amendments this time based on some of the things that occurred during the last session. And then Senator Stone has Senate Joint Resolution 5, which establishes a political practices enforcement commission in the Constitution. This is what California has. It's like taking the California system and placing it here. What's interesting is that if that were to become effective, that new commission would take over enforcement of the ethics law. There's 5 members proposed of that commission, all appointed by the executive branch. It would also include the topics of lobbying, campaign finance, and financial disclosures, which other ethics commissions across the country have some of those, a smattering of those under their umbrella. The one that is not in here that we see, I think, more is that like a public records kind of enforcement arm. Some of our ethics folks, when we go to Kogel, they talk about those particular topics. So that's where we are in terms of the legislature. I have meetings scheduled with both of those sponsors next week to learn more about their proposals and provide feedback that we might have. We talked a lot about the strategic plan today in terms of the reputational item, which goes to our goal of maintaining public's trust. We had a great meeting yesterday with Officer Harvey on setting some education and outreach goals for the future in that part of the strategic plan. We completed our first month of the time study. We haven't done the analysis yet, but it will be interesting to see what everybody's doing. Like, I know for me, commissioner contact was a surprisingly high number of hours. I didn't think about the number of hours spent on commissioner contact. It just happens. It didn't really occur to me in terms of what chunk that was. And then the good news, of course, is that on our pillar of technology and service improvements, the governor included a replacement of our case management system in his proposed budget. And that was a good transition to the budget update. We had our budget hearing on Monday. Thrilling way to start President's Day down at the legislative building. In our budget, our biggest one is our case management system overhaul. We also have some appropriate and additional budgeting for Officer Harvey and outreach and education materials. When we built that package last session, we gave it our best guess and have realized like, oh, we actually need a couple of other things to make it happen. And then one of the ones we got questions on is our federal ARPA funding expires. And so there's a transfer of our Nevada Ethics Online will shift from the ARPA funding to our regular funding formula. The legislature had some questions in writing before the hearing, so I anticipated questions during the hearing. But we provided them with like how many people have completed training and what are your metrics. And so they were happy with all of those answers. We didn't get any questions about that during the hearing. If you recall, at our last meeting, we approved our language access plan. It was interesting because it was a hot topic at our budget hearing, not for us, but for another agency there. But there is a process for us to request IFC funding to implement parts of our plan. And so we have requested, funding to translate our vital documents into the top 3 non-English languages. So that'll be like our complaint form, acknowledgement form, advisory request, and our ethics quick reference guide. The original request was 1,200. In working with fiscal folks today, it's going to be more than that based on what they found And so we should hopefully get that money in April or June and then quickly execute that so that we have part of that leverage access plan in place. And then, just as a reminder for folks, our upcoming meetings in March, we don't have a meeting scheduled. We will have panels. And then April 16th meeting will be in Reno and June 18th will be in Ely. We'll start coordinating travel early on the Ely one because when we all travel, it's a whole nother ballgame. So that is my report on operations. I'm happy to take any questions from the commissioners at this time.
Commissioner Lowry.
Thank you. So the SJR 5, I think presents us with a nice opportunity, and I know you're really good at this, Ross, in terms of working collaboratively with the legislature. I think the legislation has significant legal hurdles in terms of what it proposes to put in our Constitution and separation of powers issues and so on and so forth. That being said, my question would be, again, I think it's a feedback opportunity for us if this legislator has concerns, because it would basically usurp the Ethics Commission. So if he has concerns about Ethics Commission in Nevada, I would like to know what the concerns are, and maybe we could move to address some of the things that he thinks is not adequately happening here. So again, just like our public speaker, I think the legislators' proposed legislation is an opportunity for us to maybe grow as a commission. And then just to plant a seed, I think one of the things we struggle with when we're trying to come to a conclusion on a case and the penalty portion, we often look to previous cases to create parity. Well, if historically the commission has done pretty low fines and you're in the position of trying to create some level of parity, how do you ever grow your fines? Or, how do you get out of kind of that rut of, well, maybe things have changed, maybe expectations have changed, maybe those fines should get bigger. But if they're always going to be compared to fines of similar cases 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it seems to me that we're kind of like in a catch-22. So food for thought.
Thank you. I will note that Commissioner Council Bass and I have had many times where we're looking at a case and more so when she was in the associate counsel position and we're trying to figure out the right proposal and where do we land. Looking to the past was a challenge because it was pretty light. We have submitted an article, it will be in the April edition of the Nevada Lawyer that kind of talks about our history, celebrating our 50th anniversary, and there's this arc towards enforcement. So I think there's a way to do it. One of the things we do have to be cautious about is that when cautious. When we make a shift and say, we think this is deserving of a higher fine than we've given in the past, we need to make sure that the record is clear for the justification. Because one of the things that Liz has to do if we're challenged is to prove, well, I guess it's the other side that has to prove, but our opinions can't be arbitrary and capricious. And so we can't say, here's two cases that have the same facts. You get 0 fine, you get $10,000 fine, right? We have to make sure that that record is clear. And I think over time, enforcement can evolve without triggering that arbitrary and capricious issue. But that's certainly something for the commission to think about moving forward.
Thank you.
When's the last time that the legislature addressed the penalties? Do you know the fines? I think that's one way, perhaps, if the legislature were to raise the potential penalties.
Right.
I think that would say to us that the legislature expects us to impose stiffer penalties. The other is potentially inflation, obviously, that we could look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue you have to be careful with is when you start taking bits and pieces to the legislature, it opens Pandora's box. And you end up probably having more exposure to modification than you really want to. But I think if we look at the severity of the issue and start really being serious about how severe this issue, or whether it's a repetitive issue, that those fines increase because of that. And so I think we need to look at, when we discuss these, we need to look at the severity of what was taking place with the violation and gauge to the penalty to that. It's difficult. Real estate commission, the gentleman mentioned the $100,000 penalty, but that was an egregious violation with that the real estate commission uncovered, and so went through and leveled a pretty hefty fine. But I think there was a gasp in the back of the room when that happened. You know, people went, ooh, you know. But I think you really need we need to look at more of the context of that, and you know, it's subjective, but nonetheless, I think we need to do that.
And one of the elements of for the record, this is Executive Director Armstrong again. One of the elements of the maintaining public's trust part of the strategic plan is to come up with some objective and consistent ways that we do propose that. So we can say, yes, this is why we're asking for more, because these factors are here, right? Like this public officer made a bunch of money on this, or they knew before, those types of things. And we can, in some ways, I think, but certainly like the fines is important, but you can also look, I think, at the success of other enforcement actions. For example, in the 2022 election, we had lots of uniform cases. And this commission aggressively went, I mean, there was like 8 or 10 uniform cases that the commission processed that year. I think we got one full case last time where and they were very quick to say, oh man, I screwed it. They took it down from their website. So that was we coupled enforcement with, we had a kickoff for campaigns that said, hey, don't do this particular stuff, right? And so we were able to pair enforcement with education and adjust behavior, which I think is part of the key, right? If there's not strong enough enforcement, then there's no necessarily change in behavior. We saw that between these two elections on at least that particular front.
And out of interest to share, looking at the legislative history, it looks like 1999 was the last time the fine amounts were
That's what I was looking at.
adjusted.
So it has been a while. But if the opportunity arises, perhaps we might advocate for that in someone else's bill, then.
It's better than being replaced.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask about SJR 5, would it cover the legislature? Do you know, or is it a question you have for the sponsor?
Would it cover the legislature?
Yes.
Yes, so that is interesting, and I think, there was a lot of publicity last year about one particular bill where there were lots of legislators with interest in the bill, and there was no disclosure of abstention, so there was this. I think that there's a sense that they need to do something, so, yes, I mean, the SJR 5 puts it in the Constitution, so it would eliminate the previous constitutional questions about separation of powers, because the Constitution would now say this commission governs both branches. And I mean, we have a litigation item before us at the Supreme Court. It's not in front of the Supreme Court on the issue of the constitutionality of our commission, but an argument that is in the substance of that case is that this is an unconstitutional commission because the governor doesn't appoint everybody. It's interesting, being in the Constitution would provide more protections for us. And so I will find out if there are concerns with the current commission. I think it's probably more of a concern of legislative ethics and putting it in a place where it's protected from certain attacks.
I see.
From litigants is my guess.
The issue, and I have some context of that, having dealt with public officials with ICMA in California, but we have an imbalance of issues with that state. But I'll just put it in that context. But it took forever to have cases run through the California system. I mean, it takes years. And so if you think that our system is slow, ours is light speed comparatively to what they're seeing there. So from a model standpoint, it may have some benefits, but from a practicality standpoint, from my opinion, I think you would really be bogging things down because you're gonna get a tremendous amount of cases and it's gonna take a long time to resolve them.
So,
Mr. Long?
yes. Yeah, so I noticed, so on this, there are 5 appointments, right? So what constitutional officer did they leave out? Do you happen to recall?
I believe it is either the controller or
Probably the controller.
or the treasurer.
Controller.
Yeah, it was one of those two.
Well, and there are no legislative appointments. There are no legislative appointments. I know it's-
Yeah, and
Right.
I just, looking at this, I see, they want to talk about campaign finance, which it's kind of, we have it, but it's not
It's definitely not robust.
robust, So I think this is more directed to the legislature, definitely, and, when they've been trying to exempt themselves out, they're not gonna put a bill in that makes it worse for them, I just don't see that. I have another question, on SB 78, are you monitoring that to make sure it doesn't get scope creep? We managed to stay out of that deal last time, but.
Yeah, so for everybody, SB 78 is a bill from the Department of Business and Industry. Last session, there was a bill to create a deputy director in that department and then put boards and commissions under the purview of that individual for coordination purposes. We were originally part of that bill. We testified against that bill at the legislature, saying that we're independent. We shouldn't report to a governor appointed agency because of the independent nature of our work. The final bill really focused on like professional licensing types of boards and commissions. So there's a bunch that are exempt. So it's that same universe currently in 78. We are monitoring it closely to make sure they don't add a bunch of boards and commissions, including us, into it. It has some, so it has more kind of centralization of services for those boards and some standardization. We have really benefited from the appointment of that deputy director in some of our cases, including the one we heard today, where we can get good information. Trying to track down who's doing what on which board and commission. Our Officer Harvey is now working with Ms. Haig to set some all boards and commissions training opportunities, like to have one pass through of information and training. But definitely we'll keep an eye on that bill to make sure that we're not now lumped under. But it seems primarily focused on professional licensing types of
The
boards.
section or the Title 54 boards, I think it is.
Yeah.
But they're leaving out a bunch that really should be in there.
Yeah, Ross, I support that, having you out. By the way, before I retired, but, and the focus I felt was really on where the real issue is on boards that handle occupational licensing. And then there's, as a separate policy issue, aside from occupational licensing, needs to be a consolidation or of other boards and commissions that are more policy oriented and not occupational licensing boards, and whether they're really needed or not. You have a lot of them that are just whether whether they should be under the county or under a different format or do not don't exist, shouldn't exist. But the occupational licensing was the focus. Now, with that being said, I think it's very appropriate to comment about making sure that there's not a scope creep during the session.
Well, they went with professional licensing and occupational together, which are two different animals.
Yeah.
So they got some hurdles on that one.
To address your earlier question, it was 2 appointed by the governor, the state controller, secretary of state, and attorney general, which is interesting.
So treasurer out.
Interesting.
And the 2 appointed by the governor have to be different political parties. Just out of interest.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so they left out two constitutional officers.
It was the Secretary of State, Attorney General, and the Comptroller.
So treasurer and lieutenant governor. are-
Yeah, two governor
Any other questions or comments on the executive director's presentation? Report. I don't think there's any action items, so nothing to vote on. So that brings us to item number 9, the report on outreach and education. Officer Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, yes, a written report is provided. So diving right into outreach, something of note that we've been starting to keep an eye on as legislative session is progressing, is using the session as a way to monitor what social media presence looks like for our public officers and employees and our legislators, as a way to track, I suppose, engagement and overall presence on Blue Sky versus X. We are still seeing a larger presence on X compared to Blue Sky in terms of, local issues relevant to Nevadans as legislative session progresses. Just something that we're keeping an eye on as we continue to monitor the degree to which, our presence on social media is effective in reaching our public officers, employees, and the public at large. Additionally, I solicited some directed outreach to our Nevada department heads to encourage newsletter subscriptions at the beginning of the calendar year, which has seemed to be really effective. We've gotten, I think, around 242 and counting new subscribers to the newsletter, which is great. I'll shout out the Department of Motor Vehicles has clearly done a great job at, soliciting and strongly encouraging a lot of their team to subscribe. So, we offered, you can subscribe yourself or subscribe your leadership and have them, forward along messaging, whatever method works best for their team, but you're doing a great job over there. And then as Director Armstrong mentioned, we're connecting directly with the boards and commissions outreach to hopefully provide directed training catered towards them and offer it that way as well. And the communications coming from their office as well has made a noticeable impact in terms of, a handful of boards and commission members newly appointed in the new year registering for Nevada Ethics Online. So we're seeing that uptick. We're seeing that they've gotten messaging from that office, that they now know that we exist. They know this training exists, which is exciting to see in action. It's just great to be able to demonstrate. On the education front, we have had a busy January, very busy January. So thank you to Director Armstrong for joining me in many of those training sessions. And we wrapped up the training with the library district as well as part of that agreement. So they did well in getting a large number of all of their staff trained. In terms of upcoming trainings between now and the end of June, I believe we have between 8 and 10 live trainings coming up, which is exciting. We've started tracking the trainings as they progress throughout the calendar year to see how we're comparing to prior fiscal years. And we are very much on track and well surpassing prior fiscal years. This fiscal year so far, we're at approximately 1,747 public officers and employees trained, which is really exciting to see the engagement and how our strategic partners and increase in requests for live trainings has gone on the uptick. So doing well there. Just a brief update on Nevada Ethics Online. In the fiscal year 25 so far, we've had about 739 completed courses, which is really helpful to be able to present to the legislature and demonstrate, we're paying for this tool, we're going to be paying for it eventually out of the general fund, and it is an effective method so far of giving access to a lot of our public servants as well. Okay, and then we're also currently exploring the statutory allowance for charging some or all future users in the event that, depending on how that agreement maps out, if that is necessary. So that's going to be an interesting exploration as well, and expansion of that project. In terms of publications, we recently refreshed our cooling off guide, framing it as a guide to leaving public service. I've been noticing we're very familiar with the term cooling off, but I think no one necessarily knows what that means until they're told what that means, right? So we talk about that and have made that hopefully a little bit more accessible for folks and available on our website, and talked about it a little bit on social media. We distributed our second newsletter, distributed to about 1,500 users at this time. And then we're in the process of developing an ethics ambassador toolkit within Nevada Ethics Online for agency representatives, whether they be folks within training, leadership, HR, or maybe our agency attorneys, to be able to represent the education that we provide within the commission, and hopefully disseminate that when appropriate to their agency as well, and continuing our monthly review of manual content for improvements as well as that. Finally, with regards to the requests for information and public records, we're totaling to approximately 78 this fiscal year so far, as a cumulative total, with the proportions in categories about the same as we've seen. And then I included some additional visuals to talk about how we've responded, which I hope is helpful in terms of the records that we've provided in response to public records requests, being at about 60% into which we actually had responsive records, and 40% where we didn't have any records to provide. And then when folks have requested information, we've been able to respond substantively about 87% of the time. So I think that's been helpful to just keep an eye on those numbers and be able to see, how responsive we've been able to be to the public within our statutory limitations and the resources and records that we retain and provide. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments on Officer Harvey's report?
So I wanted to ask a question about when you do your trainings, do you get feedback and questions? Do you get a lot of two-way interaction on that? Or do they pay attention? This is a loaded question, but do they actually pay attention and want to engage in discussion on it? Or is it?
Yeah, they seem, fairly engaged depending on the audience. Of course, when you have, a virtual training and everyone's muted, it's different than when you're in person and there's different mediums. But yeah, people tend to be fairly engaged. They tend to be, fairly comfortable asking questions and invested in, improving their awareness of the law, I would say, more broadly.
Are you doing a survey too now?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I present those results somewhat quarterly for us, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it tends to be very positive. Yeah, in terms of, I have them report on whether or not they feel like they're substantively more informed about the law, whether it be in terms of the actual content of the law or how to get resources or ask questions should that arise for them after the training.
And do you kind of tailor your presentation based on who you're presenting to?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Most notably in the examples is, the law is the law, or the amount of time that we'll spend. Obviously with boards and commissions, we're talking a little bit longer for disclosure and abstention compared to when I'm talking to the group of folks at the library. It's a little bit different. But yeah, absolutely. That's the idea.
Okay. Now, because if it's just the same for everybody, then people aren't going to engage. For our new Commissioner Miller, and even Commissioner Smith, our online tool is a great place to go just to kind of get up to speed on the ethics law and stuff. And you can do it in little snippets instead of having to plow through pages of stuff and
Yes, absolutely.
look for it. So, but yeah, and I'm impressed by the numbers, so keep up the good work.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the most impressive things was at this time last year, there was no ethics newsletter. And now we have almost as many people signed up for the newsletter as we've been able to train in person. And so that's a great tool and an example of how that additional capacity we received by getting this position is helping us reach people in new ways. And Officer Harvey's right, like because we get a little notification each time somebody signs up, and it was like, oh, the DMV director just sent out their big blast because it just came in, and we did like a draft. Here's the email to send, like change it so it's your name. It talks about the importance of ethics and go out and
Make it
So-
real easy for them to copy, paste, click, send to their team, be done with that list item.
That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we hope, you know, with, as communications go in general, right, that it can become an additional mouthpiece for the commission to demonstrate, you know, that and continue to build on our strategic plan in terms of trust and integrity that we want to hold the commission and have another, it be another means in which we convey that to the public.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Langton, any comments, questions?
No, thank you.
Any other comments or questions, Commission? Oh, that brings us to item 10, which is Commissioner comments. Any general comments outside of the Outreach and
I
Education
just
Board?
want to say, welcome to Commissioner Miller. Look forward to working with you and like Commissioner Langton said, he said, I thought this was gonna be like a 2-hour job every month, but no, he says some days it's like 5 hours. And I joke with my husband on Sundays, well, it's time to do my ethics homework, you know? So,
A lot more since the 99 law with
oh, yeah.
making it confidential. A lot more of it is done confidentially by email, kind of going through cases and trying to sift through them
Mhm.
so that only those that have some merit are worthy of a hearing actually get the public. So public doesn't always see that, and it's a double-edged sword. And so they don't see the work we're doing behind the scenes. But it is important because the commission had been used for a while as a tool to just file a frivolous complaint and then run a campaign ad saying so-and-so's been accused of ethics violations.
Mhm.
And so this process is designed to make that more difficult. Doesn't necessarily stop it, but it's designed to make it more difficult. So,
I have a question. Could somebody send me a copy of SJR 5, please?
We'll do that. I don't know, legislative.
yeah, their executive director Armstrong or commission counsel Bassett will send that to you.
It's on.
I'm happy to be here and
Yeah, so-
I would agree, there was a lot more paperwork than I thought, to get up to speed, so.
You're not done yet.
Yeah, no, I am excited though. I think it's an important aspect of overseeing government, and so I'm happy to serve and look forward to getting to know you all better and getting through all the paperwork and getting used to the process of review panels and the like, so.
Well, we're happy to have you. Welcome. Glad that you're willing to devote your time to it. We need good people to do that.
Definitely.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? One quick question, April, we anticipate some contested hearings in April.
Nothing contested. There may be some stipulations.
Okay. Great. I think that brings us to item number 11, which is our second public comment item on the agenda. Do we have anyone who would like to make public comment?
We have no members of the public online.
Okay. No one here in the room, no one online, nothing by email.
We've received nothing by email.
Thank you all.
Another DMV members.
With that, I think a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Moved by Chair Wallen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Lowry. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I know them.